Josh is standing by. He's in his car, Brown, but it's not moving.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's got anywhere to go. Josh Pate, 24/7, late kick with Josh Pate. You see it every night there. Are you going somewhere? You going to stay? You stick around? Or what are we doing here?
No, I'm going to stick around, but I think I just get better lighting in the Jeep than I do in my own studio. So for all the audience knows, and this is where kind of suspension of disbelief comes in, for all you know, I'm just out in the parking lot, even though I don't really need to be.
Okay.
I like
this
that.
is Josh with God's lighting is what this is. Yeah. The studio can't do it as well as God.
Retractable roof today, playing it under God's light there.
Hey, so quite the story in college football last week. Obviously, the Bryan Harsin Auburn situation. I don't know where you stood last week on this. Me and Dunaway there is no chance that this guy can come back. They're going to have to pay him the $18.3 million. It's inevitable. He is not coaching in 2022. The next thing you know, he's back. Auburn fans are rallying around him. How shocked were you that Harsin is actually back?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say my shock factor was about a 9 to a 9.5 that he's back. Now, that's independent of what my personal feel on it was, but just observing everything, what I thought the strategy was, I've always called it kind of a poison pill strategy within college athletics. Like on Wall Street, I watched Succession, so I'm an expert on all this now. The poison pill strategy on Wall Street it's not like the poison pill in college athletics. In college athletics, if you're a big money donor and you may not align with the AD and you want your guy out, you do have enough power to influence message boards and Twitter and headlines. So my version of the poison pill in college athletics is, let's just float enough bad sounding stuff out there that even if it's not proven, we can validly say, hey, at this point, we can't afford to bring this guy back either way. And we thought, or I at least thought, that they'd gotten to that spot at Auburn. I thought they'd gotten past the point of no return where they were going to reasonably be able to look any camera in the face and say, look, details or no details, proof or no proof, we can't bring this guy back now. And they got to that point. But the thing about that point is the other side kind of has to capitulate. The other side kind of has to agree with that. Harsin never agreed with that. Harsin's representation never agreed with that. There was never a middle ground to be found on buyout terminology. He didn't even so much as come back from Mexico before he needed to. So Bryan Harsin played it the way every kind of fake gangster out there in a cubicle today thinks they would play it. But he actually had the stones to follow through and play it that way. And I think that's why he's still the head coach at Auburn today.
And that's all fine and dandy until you start getting wins or losses again. And a lot of Auburn people I talk to, fans, say, did we just kick the can down the road? Are they still going to get rid of him in December? This roster isn't top of the SEC roster. Who knows what they're going to be at quarterback? And the recruiting has been sort of middle of the pack. Do you think Auburn just sort of kicked the can down the road here and these same guys will be coming for Bryan Harsin again in 8 months?
Sure. Yeah, I think that. But I also saw the Cincinnati Bengals play for a Super Bowl last night. So obviously crazier runs have been gone on in high-level competition. But even if Auburn doesn't go on a run, let's say they're a 7-win team this year. I don't know where the Vegas totals will be at, but I would imagine Auburn will be in that 6-7 win range maybe. Let's say they're average. They go 7-5 this year. Is that a no man's land? Is that a definitive, let's press the red button? Like, I don't know where that falls now, because here's what we can't know. Like, the four of us can sit here right now and we can talk all we want to about the future of Auburn athletics. Bottom line is, we don't even know the status of Allen Green there. I love Allen Green, but I don't know the status of him as the AD there. I don't know who will even be running the ship 12 months from now. And so that's independent of what the actual on-field product will be. But if you notice, because this is what I noticed last week, I noticed a lot of shift in perception. I put one of those good old-fashioned Twitter polls out there. It gets no more scientific than that. And I said, has your opinion changed on Bryan Harsin the past 7 days? And like 30% of the people who voted said, yeah, my opinion has changed. Now, I don't know how many of that is Auburn fan versus just agnostic fan, but you noticed kind of this shift in perception amongst some of the Auburn folks last week. And I don't think it was so much pro Bryan Harsin. I think it was anti-establishment, because they're not thrilled with his recruiting. They're not thrilled with the product on the field in year one. But a lot of Auburn folks rightfully look around and say, Harsin or not, let's just put a generic coach in here. There are some forces at work behind the curtain at our university that are really preventing us from ever having one of those stories. How would Dabo Swinney ever happen at Auburn? How would a guy come out of nowhere? How would Sam Pittman ever happen to Auburn? How would they ever be given time? Because if they weren't handpicked by those people who we are speaking about, would they ever even be given time to have the roots planted or seeds planted and take root and grow? I don't even know that could happen there right now.
Josh Pate is with us at Late Kick Josh on Twitter, at Late Kick Josh. You see it at 24/7 Sports all over his Twitter feed as well, at Late Kick Josh. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. The problem with what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, when you talk about 7-5, is that no man's land. Let me give you 7 of their last 8 opponents. LSU, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, Texas A&M, at Alabama. If you are 7-5, chances are the vast majority of those 5 losses are going to come in that stretch. So it's a lot of times the finish is the way you're judged, maybe not even the overall product.
You know, I'm going to say it because Bryan Harsin can't. This is so unfair. And they're also playing Penn State in out-of-conference action. So it's just no one ever wants to have the conversation that we're about to have. But it's the same way with Arkansas. You can either look at Arkansas last year and say, that's a 9-win team. That's a 4-loss team. Or you can understand, okay, but they played both participants in the national championship game. They play in the SEC West. The bottom line is, if I gave Arkansas Cincinnati's schedule, they're probably a playoff team. Don't change anything about the team, just change the schedule. And we could very well get to that point with Auburn this year, where there's some context that needs to be had, but there's a motivation to be absent of context because a lot of folks are going to want him out of there. And so if they go 7-5, no one cares that they lost to 4 of the top 15 teams in the country by a combined 19 points. They won't care about any of that. It's just that they're a 4-loss team. They're a 5-loss team. It's why I always push the adage that people who say you are what your record says you are in college are lunatics. There's so much more to it than that because there's so much more context and layering and strength of schedule in college football than that. But to circle back to what you said, I don't really think they'll care. I think there'll be a motivation to be absent context and to say, hey, losses are losses. You're paid to win here. We don't care how tough it is.
Josh, it is so difficult to have a content fan base. But when you look in the SEC West, to me, it seems like 6 of the 7 fan bases are really content on their head coach. The one that's unsure right now is Auburn. Would you agree that 6 of 7 are like, we've got our guy locked in at least for the next couple of years?
We can extend it beyond that. I would say 13 of 14 SEC programs in general right now would be to some degree happy with their head coach. I had an administrative type tell me that the other day. He said, do you realize how rare a time we are right now in the SEC? And therefore, do you realize how big a train wreck's probably coming down the road? Right now, he said, man, 13 of 14 programs and 13 of 14 fan bases are at least somewhat happy. I mean, what are we looking at? Are we looking at Eli Drinkwitz? Like, where's the next most unhappy fan base right now? Florida made a move. South Carolina is 1 year apart from making a move. Tennessee ditto. So everyone's happy. LSU just made a move. It's Auburn, and that's it. They're the one. It's not Vandy. It's not Kentucky. It's Auburn. That's the one fan base that may be below 50% approval rating for the head coach. Now, that probably does not bode well for Bryan Harsin, but when you extend beyond Auburn, there are not enough wins. I crunched the numbers. There are not enough wins to go around when everyone has to play everyone. So there's some discontent coming down the road and probably multiple outposts in this conference.
193 days from week 0. What's a big off-season storyline that you're watching? Give me something that's on the late kick radar that you're going to be watching over the 193 days.
Well, the first thing I believe in doing is removing people who use that O word from my life, Dunaway. Now, I cannot remove you from my life because I love you too much. But I don't believe that we even have to use that word. I whisper it when I have to say it. So I don't believe in that season that you referenced there.
Right.
But what I do think is really fascinating is if you shift your attention over to the East right quick, you know, Tennessee and South Carolina are both programs that overachieved relative to expectation in year 1 of their respective coaching tenures there. And those are also fan bases who would look and say, okay, we won 7 games, but we were close in this game, this game, this game. And so these are people who in some ways are accurately thinking, hey, they're just a whisker away from 9 wins, 10 wins. And now we're second year. You're supposed to make your most improvement year 1 to year 2. That's what the book tells you. And so I'm really wondering what reasonable expectation levels will be set at in Knoxville and Columbia. Because in the SEC East, everyone thinks about Georgia. Well, that's great. But, Mark Stoops and Kentucky have been the model of consistency, and everyone enters every year just defaulting them down to number 4 or number 5, and they always end up higher than that. So I'm very fascinated by that. And that's not even to mention what Billy Napier is going to do at Florida. I thought it was totally mind-blowing that he walked in and he got great early returns. And so you start to dig into the details, like, why do these people love him so much already? And you find out all it took to walk into Florida and win the locker room was get rid of parking tickets, give them decent food, and give them decent dorms, which quite literally means at the University of Florida, food and shelter and taking away the parking tickets is all it took to win the locker room over before spring practice.
Yeah, stray dogs. They're like a stray dog.
Well, I mean, what's that say about Dan Mullen, though? I mean, a lot of people would say, I'd like to have Dan Mullen as a coach. I mean, he couldn't figure that out?
It means that I think Dan is going to be in a TV studio for quite a while. That's what I think it means.
He's not that bad at that either. I mean,
he's not.
Because he's always been a really good talker. I think that has always been Dan Mullen's strength, is he talks a good game.
I'll do Drake real quick for you. I'll start at the bottom and work it around. Old Dominion,
unbelievable.
Old Dominion, Marshall, and Southern Miss are leaving early to go to the Sun Belt. It looks like. Does that work its way all the way to the top? And can we get Texas and Oklahoma in next year? Can we just work from the bottom all the way to the top and bring them in early?
So here's how that's happening right now. You know how you can tell that a lot of times people don't really know what's going on, but they want to pretend like they do know what's going on. So they'll just kind of wink at you. That's what's happening with Texas and OU. Everybody who is in the TV industry or in the administrative side of things in the SEC or beyond, when you ask them, hey, when is this move happening? They all do something like this. They all go, hey, just keep an eye open. My eyes are open. I want you to tell me what's going to happen. Well, hey, could be sooner than you think. That's all you can get out of people. It's like trying to nail a square of Jell-O to the wall. No one knows. So if we were to wake up next week and the headline on ESPN bottom line was Texas OU moving immediately, that wouldn't shock me. If they held a press conference downtown Birmingham tomorrow and said it is indeed going to be until 2026 before these teams move, that wouldn't shock me either. I think there's so many moving parts there. I don't really even think Greg Sankey could give you a firm timetable on that right now, but I would be happy to be proven wrong on that.
All right, at Late Kick Josh is where you follow Josh on Twitter. Watch him at 24/7 Sports at Late Kick Josh. It is Late Kick with Josh Pate. Thank you so much for the time, Josh. Always fun talking with you.
Thank you, sirs. I'm headed back inside now.
All right, buddy. Be careful. Be careful going in. Josh with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.